Hey everyone. Good. If you're in the East Coast of the States, good morning. If you're somewhere else, good evening. It's wonderful to see you. It's the virtual Dalcroze meetup. I'm Stephen Neely. I am your co-host, and I'm here with my dear friend and colleague Emma Shubin, and we want to welcome you to the 91st virtual Dalcroze meetup. We've been doing this for 5 years, which is insanity. And we have racked up, as of today, it'll be 91 hours of free sharing sessions, where we invite anybody from wherever your practice is to come and tell us a little bit about what you do and get into a nice conversation about where music and movement and Dalcroze related ideas overlap with your background. And then we also offer master classes and short courses, which have been really quite popular. And we've now amassed a archive of more than, I think we're getting up to about 50 master classes and I don't know, getting close to 20 short courses. And it's really pretty cool. So welcome. Nice to see everybody. The agenda is in the chat there. Our routine from nearly the beginning is to take 2 minutes at the beginning and just meet a couple people who are in our room. So I'm going to, as quick as I can, make a quick breakout room. I think we'll do 3. So you'll just have a couple people. So when you get to the room, if you would be willing, say hi to everybody. Tell them your name. Where do you live? And who do you teach? Or who do you wish you taught? Or who do you hang out with? You don't have to be a teacher to be here. But if you would greet whoever and just get a chance to meet somebody. I'm going to call you back in 3 minutes. It's going to be fast. So get ready, set, and go. There you go. Everybody's back. Our thought with the breakout room there is that it's never long enough, and hopefully everybody thinks, oh, if I just had one more minute, I'd ask more questions. I like these people. So you just have to come back to more meetups. I want to introduce Emma. I think almost everybody here knows Emma, but Emma's my co-host. And Emma, do you have some announcements for us?
I sure do, Stephen. You guys don't want to miss. We have a wonderful short course presented by Gregory Risto that'll start at the end of this month. And so 3 sessions with him on solfege. He's a genius. It's going to be wonderful. And you're going to learn things you didn't know. And then after that, we have Timothy Codwell is going to be joining us. And I think people in this room are more of an expert about him than I am. So I'm going to I'll let Stephen say a few more words, but I am really excited. I've only known him through what he's written. And so to actually have an experience one-on-one with him, I think is a little bit of a rarity. So I'm really excited to be there for that. Stephen, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. So as far as the Greg, I had someone reach out and say, he said something about Baroque dance and it says solfege. Like, what are we doing? And I went back and looked and I said, no, I'm pretty sure he's using one of the Bach suites just as the inspiration for the solfege work that he's going to be doing with everyone. If you haven't worked with Greg, what I said to this other person is he's a solfege ninja, and he can make magic happen that makes my head spin. And so we're really excited to get to work with Gregory again. Absolutely worth anybody's time. And then Timothy Caldwell, I don't know if any of you have ever met him in person. I never had, and I had the great fortune of being a part of the VDM here and had a good excuse to reach out to him and say, hey, any chance you want to come and work? And he was lovely. He's the nicest guy. He spent his whole career at Central Michigan University, mostly as a voice teacher. And he was a student of Bob Abramson from the United States. And so if you know the kind of pedigree of a Bob Abramson student, Timothy Caldwell really fits in it quite well. Most of his work is with adults. Most of his work came out of this really rich training with Bob, and then he took that training and put it right into his university teaching. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be a cool session, and he's super nice. So I'm really excited, as Emma was saying, to bring somebody into the discussion that we haven't been able to talk with in recent years, and to just get a chance to meet him. So Lots going on. Okay, so the plan of the day is Eurythmics and performer training. I think that we certainly have the Dalcroze world is quite wide, and we work with everybody, age 2 to 99, and lots of different settings. We seem to get a lot of traction with the kids, which is well-deserved and extremely important work. There's lots of cases and lots of people around the world who are doing Dalcroze work with children. There's also a really exciting new-ish conversation around working with older adults, but one that seems that it's a niche that it's maybe, I don't know, maybe just a little less practiced, or there's maybe a few less or opportunities, is working with either professional performers or pre-professional performers, and thinking about what is the role of this work with them, also acknowledging that this is kind of where our work came from. Jacques Dalcroze's first students were the conservatory students getting ready to go to the main stage. So with that, we're reviving a little roundtable that we had at ICDS 7 in Luxembourg this summer with Andrew and Michael. So I don't know whose name was first on the agenda. Let me look. The agenda says Andrew's first. So Andrew, will you, greetings and welcome, and thank you for joining us, and will you tell us a little bit about where you are and who do you teach, and maybe some thoughts about how you're using these ideas with your students?
Thanks, Stephen. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here as part of the VDM, and nice to be on this panel again with Stephen and Michael, as we were last summer for ICDS. Pretty much my contribution today comes from work as an actor trainer and a music educator. I'm based in the UK in a conservatoire context, and I've had over 30 years of engagement with Dalcroze Eurythmics. So I see Eurythmics as more than a subject or a way of teaching. I position it as a way of organising and understanding creative material across all of the performing arts. My main job is as a senior lecturer in acting and musical theatre. I'm at Guildford School of Acting in the University of Surrey in the UK. So the town of Guildford is the main city within the area of Surrey, which is about a half hour out of central London. And I work across acting, musical theatre, active musicianship, and my students are training not only to act, sing and dance, but to make sense of rhythm, of time, of impulse, of intention. And this has to adapt to live and recorded performance contexts. And so what I wanted to suggest today is that Eurythmics offers performer training something more profound than maybe a neat set of exercises. I see that it offers me a way of immersing performance students in a process of inquiry into the work that they're doing, and a way of empathizing with either a character or a composer or a movement practice. And this is in relation to their own skills, of course, but it's also in relation to the work of others, whether that's fellow performers, composers, writers, choreographers. And it's the relationship to the structures that they're working within as well. And that could be the institutional structures of their degree course, the conservatoire, the university, but it might also be those so-called industry structures for employability and so on. And I'm finding more and more that Eurythmics is a very good way of doing this, because there's a lot of quite literal concrete stuff that's going on in a class, but then there's also a kind of meta level of how we can organize our thinking about what we do as a professional. At the ICDS roundtable in the summer last year, we spoke about Eurythmics as a bridge. That was the theme of ICDS, and a bridge that is artistic and pedagogical. And so my own work is very much about what does that bridge look like in the context of a contemporary performer's work, particularly where the the actor, the musician, the mover are already working in interdependent ways, and those art forms are working in interdependent ways within the one student. But they're often taught as though they were not interdependent. So Eurythmics is a way of bringing together. So in my context, Eurythmics isn't taught as a standalone subject. It's not called a Dalcroze class, but it operates implicitly across all of the classes that I teach. So it shapes how the students are asked, particularly to listen, and not only the audible and oral sense of listen, but to listen kinesthetically, to listen relationally, and it informs how the students experience rhythm not as something that's external to them that needs to be followed, as might be the case in a commercial dance class, for example. It's often driven by an external sound in the music. This is a much more internalized sense of how we relate to rhythm, and that is then brought out of the student. Something generated through action, that's important to say, that we're always in motion. And it's reframing musicality as a shared, embodied ensemble responsibility rather than a kind of specialist skill or a soloist skill. I suspect to people that are in the conservatoire sector that are working with instrumentalists, there are less opportunities to work in a cohort-based or a group-based situation. And that, of course, is a key thing that Eurythmics can offer those soloists. Stephen, tell me how much time I've got so I don't rattle
Yes,
on.
thank you. I meant to, we normally remind to say
That's okay.
we try to give everybody about 7 minutes. So you're maybe three
Yeah,
minutes
okay.
in. So if you want another three or
Okay.
so, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. I think what's important for actor musicians, now these are the types of actors who are being trained like a text-based actor, but they are also multi-instrumentalists as well. So they're often playing while they're in a scene, or they are moving and playing as part of an ensemble. So it's this idea of not separating out the band or the orchestra from what the actual onstage performers are doing. And also for musical theatre students as well, this is crucial because we're asking them to deepen their awareness and listening as actors, which of course then is going to lean into the quality of listening they do as a musician. Many students arrive with a quite uneven musical background, and so there is significant anxiety about being musical and what that means. So Eurythmics really allows musical understanding to emerge through a very physical experience, very practical experience, based in improvisation, based in a kind of dialogic back and forth, rather than only through a one-way street and correction. So yes, rhythm becomes something that students are asked to negotiate through space and time with others in the room, with texts, with scores, with audiences. It's never about something you get right or wrong. So we're sort of taking away the binaries in that way and trying to ask about how we build awareness and a qualitative approach to the work. But I'm equally interested in how Eurythmics supports students who don't identify as a musician at all. So that's important in acting classes for the non-singing, non-playing performer. And so in acting classes, for example, questions of timing or phrasing, weight or impulse in a text, these things are already very musical. In a devised physical theatre work, there's already a kind of implication of musicality. But they're just not always named as such. So Eurythmics gives a kind of shared vocabulary without having to collapse actor training into music or music into acting. But it's where I see Eurythmics contributing to a kind of all-round ethos of performer training in that broader sense. We're working from sensation before judgment. We're working from experience before abstraction. Students are developing their own agency, their listening capacity, their relational awareness, and they're not just artistic skills. They're enabling collaboration, adaptability, well-being, and these are the sorts of things that go right out beyond the actual subject or the project and into things that are really developing them as an individual human being. I'm just saying quickly that I'm doing my PhD by publication. I've published quite a few papers and I'm bringing them under an umbrella now for my doctorate. I'm using reflexive thematic analysis to sort of look at how those papers build some key themes around performer training. So when I'm thinking about this reimagining of eurythmics in performer training, I'm not arguing for more eurythmics classes necessarily. I'm arguing for the idea that we can do Dalcroze by stealth. We kind of add it into all of the other things that we're offering. And so it's a lot of stuff that already underpins much of what we value in a contemporary performer, but it often remains unnamed. So in that way, maybe eurythmics itself would be less visible for its own thing, but it's more integrated in the way that we're training people. So it can reshape a curriculum, help us reimagine how we assess and feedback, and improve the teaching relationships as well as the professional rehearsal culture as well.
Wonderful.
I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you so much. There'll be lots for us to unpack there. Michael, you've got 7 minutes. This is Michael Schneck in Vienna.
Thank you, Stephen. I'll talk about two different phases of my teaching. One is musical theater training, like Andrew does here, just for musical theater performers, not performer musicians. And I did this for many, many years in Vienna in two different schools. And I was supported by this, or did this in tandem with my husband, Paul Hille, a diplôme supérieur, who's passed away 4 years ago. And we did this. He had a kind of ear training curriculum, and I was doing the choral music and the music directing for our productions. So our students got it from both sides, which was very, very practical. We got using the same exercises and referencing one another. And I have to say, I feel it's absolutely fantastic training for musical theater performers. In many ways, like Andrew said, they come in with a very uneven musical background. And this is a way of playfully, that's my most important word, playfully learning these things. And of course, we're always making mistakes and tripping under our feet and everything, and that's fine, and that's how we learn. And it takes this onus of, oh my God, I can't read, and others are further, whatever. Removes that. That's also difficult when you're at a university where there are also some, for example, composers or others. And sometimes, for example, at the MOOC, the small music university here, our performers, musical theater performers, were in the same classes as the composers. Ear training, which was, it didn't reach the goals we wanted because they were just on different levels with different concentration. The musical theater performers, will concretely use their space. They need to be at that spot on the stage in the light in 4 beats or in 6 beats. They need to be aware of others moving in space around them. They need to sing harmonies. They need to have different rhythms in their bodies when they're doing a choreography, but the voice is singing another rhythm. So all of these Dalcrozian nuts and bolts are very concrete and are absolutely daily fare for them. I have to say, at least in Europe, I have the feeling that musical theater students are not expected to be able to be at a high musical level like a violin player. They're sort of treated as dummies a little bit, and I see that also in classical music. The singers are always expected to not be quite as good as the others, right? The pianists and that kind of thing. And I am a champion of the singers and the musical theater performers who can learn this just like anybody else. They just maybe have to start at a different place, or they're starting later, right? And right, so that was my training for a long time, my main work. Right now, I still am doing an amateur adult choir that sings musical theater repertoire. These people come with no musical background at all, and we use a lot of Dalcrozian methods to learn the syncopations of, I don't know how to love him in the bridge, that kind of thing, from Price Superstar. And it's very effective, and they love it, and they love to move like that. And now I'm teaching Eurythmics, teaching rhythmics students here in Vienna, and also through Erasmus exchange programs at other universities in Europe. And they're going to be teachers. And so another very important benefit of the Dalcroze teaching is presence. And I always talk to them about, as a teacher, you also need that kind of performing presence. It's similar. You have to present when you're clapping a rhythm for the group. You present it like it's the most interesting and exciting rhythm as possible to get your students motivated, right? So I think it's very closely related, and similar to the way that people view musical theater performers. I think in German-speaking rhythmics, there's not as much, and I feel I'm developing more and more into a really nuts and bolts kind of musical Dalcroze teacher. So I was just in Trossingen near Stuttgart, and was teaching syncopations and fives. And I asked them, these are rhythmic students who are doing a rhythmics bachelor or a rhythmics master. And I asked for their feedback, and they said, well, we do these exercises, but never quite as intensely, never quite as, we do them for 10 minutes, but not an hour. And I think my feedback was that they really appreciated really getting into the nuts and bolts of it and being able to learn really a musical phenomenon clearly. That's my experience. That's what I want.
Amazing. This is so cool. I gotta say, I'm not sure that 5 years ago we had any notion that this could be happening like this, and to have the internet speeds have caught up where there's almost no lag here, and we got Vienna, and we got England, and we've got Taiwan, and we've got, it's just really fun. I put myself on the roster today to share just a little bit because this is also one of my sort of favorite spaces to work. I'm going to try to only take 4 or 5 minutes. I get to work, so I teach at Carnegie Mellon University, where all music majors of voice or composition or violin or bagpipe, they're all required 4 semesters of Eurythmics, and it's been in our curriculum since 1921, and I get about 140 contact hours with all of these young musicians, ages 18 to 21 or so, and so that stands beside a more sort of Paris Conservatory style of solfège and theory, harmony, counterpoint, and music history. So our core has Eurythmics as a major pillar, and it comes from a very specifically shoes off Dalcroze focus. So that's my one community. A second group that I've been working with the last 2 years is the Houston Grand Opera Young Artists. So at the Houston Grand, they have a program called the Young Artist Program, where post-degree young professionals, ages 23 to 28, so they're not in school any longer, they've gotten their degrees, they're winning auditions all over the world, they gig all over the States and around the world, have full-time appointments at Houston Grand, where they live in Houston, they understudy all the big roles, they sing small roles, they do recitals, and while they're there, they collect a paycheck, and they get additional training. And so they get an acting teacher, and they get diction coaches, and they get a voice teacher, and I'm now part of that faculty, where they say, and Stephen is our Dalcroze Eurythmics specialist, and what I tell everybody is I'm there to teach musicianship, and so that's our heading, is we're thinking about what are the in-the-moment live choices that you're making while performing. So what are you aware of, and how do you navigate yourself in those choices? And then similar to Michael's last group there, I get asked to do a fair bit of amateur coaching, like with ensembles around. So I was just in Virginia with the Virginia Symphony Orchestra Choir. There's a ensemble here in Pittsburgh I'm meeting with next week where I'll be in the room, will be singers and instrumentalists. There's sort of a small collective that put on all different variety of things. They're a group called Resonance Works, and I go in and I just do sort of workshops with those sorts of groups. And there's just so many things that we can talk about as to what it is that we're teaching. I like this wording, musicianship, and the way that I define it is I tell anybody who will pay attention to me, I say, no one told me when I was growing up what music education was. They just kind of acted like it's one thing, like go be a better musician, teach people to be better musicians. And that was not particularly helpful for me as I was trying to be a student particularly, and to be and then to be a teacher, because I was I was overlapping things, and I couldn't ever quite figure out why I was, for instance, not being successful in my practice room as a 19-year-old, because I was going in and I was trying to do all the things, and it never occurred to me that actually those things don't all help each other. They're different silos. And so what I tell everybody is music education is three things. There is technique, which is how to get your instrument to behave in the instant you need it to behave. And so I just have enough capacity on this. I can make this sound or get it to resonate and not crack or not squeak or not whatever. Like, I know how to play the instrument. You actually don't need repertoire to learn technique. And so there's a whole category of musicianship training, or music training rather, that is just learn to play the instrument, whether it's the voice or the acting body or the violin. And then there's a second thing called literacy, and literacy is anything you can point at a score and name it. So you just open the score, you point to it. If you can name it, that's you being literate. So that's a Neapolitan sixth chord, that's an augmented chord, that's a perfect fifth, that's an A natural, not an A flat. If you can point at something and give it a name, I put that under the heading of literacy. Really important stuff, and a lot of music schools spend tons of time teaching people to be literate. Really important, although you actually don't need to be literate to be a great musician. There's lots of people who don't know how to point at anything and just knock our socks off. And then there's a third category, which is I call musicianship, someone else might call artistry, but musicianship for me is all the things you're doing in live performance that you have control over. That you're making choices about. So if I'm performing a score that someone gave me, I don't get to choose the next note that was written into the score, but I do have some say always about what kind of shading I put on that note, or how much presence I put on that note, or do I make it louder or softer? Do I try to rush it? Do I try to hold it back? Even in the most strict ensemble settings, each individual still has agency. And of course, in the solo settings or in chamber music settings, we have even more agency. And so I feel like a lot of the work that I'm working toward, I teach almost no technique in my Eurythmics classes other than how do we walk this way, not that way. And my Eurythmics walking technique is the most boring possible. Nothing fancy, nothing stylized. But that's about, and like how do we walk, how do we clap is about the only technique that I teach. I teach a fair bit of literacy because, especially my university students, it's part of their core curriculum to learn to be able to point and say things. But what I'm always aiming toward, the thing I'm most excited to teach, is the ways that we are present in our performance. So I'm always looking for musicianship lessons, which I think you just can't separate from any Dalcroze education. We're always performing, we're always engaging, we're always with others. And so trying to find ways to point out to the students, what are you responsible for? What are you choosing? How are you aware of your collaboration with the others? So you're being present, you're being aware, and then recognizing that you get to make choices in it. That's the stuff that I'm very excited about. And I think I'm going to pause because I really want, we've got 25 minutes that we can have a little conversation. There's other people in this room that really could be featured just as easily as me or any of the others. A number of the people who are here also work with professionals and pre-professionals in performer training. And so what's anybody want to talk about? The way it works is you can ask a question or just make a comment. You can talk about your own practice or ask one of us to give you more details about something we mentioned. Welcome, everyone. Who's up? Go ahead, Chris.
Hey everybody, and thank you gentlemen for sharing your experiences and for teaching, obviously. I guess I wanted to go all the way back to Andrew, who was the first to mention the word assessment. One thing that I'm running into with my undergraduate students is, it's surprising me. They're very interested in computers, so I don't know if you're running into that, but they're like, what about when you're just making music on the computer? I'm like, I don't know. I just play the piano. I can't help you with that. But still, they want to know what I think. And I'm trying to get them to turn like kind of the camera back on themselves and be like, well, no, you need to be invested in, did you make it to the spot in 6 beats or something like Michael said? Or maybe we're not doing binaries and was it a nice phrase or not in your opinion? And they go, I don't know. What do you think? And I'm like, well, that's kind of high school thinking where you're concerned with what the teacher thinks. Now we're turning to something else. And I guess I'm wondering how you're beginning or leading that discussion with them as they become the pre-professionals.
Thanks, Chris, for the question. I'm happy to talk about the sort of process of being able to see the potential in things and to work from wherever things are at any given point. Always to be asking what was successful, what can be improved, rather than are there problems that need correcting. So it's partly that's about vocabulary. And also what you're describing, I would call the wrong kind of obedient. It's the sort of student who feels like if they follow the rules, they're going to do okay, as opposed to master the rules and then see which ones you can be letting go of or looser with or taking a new approach to. And I guess that's important because we're in a world that doesn't have such clear routes to employability anymore. So we have to give a wide variety of potential aesthetics and ways of looking at the world. And of course, one of them, as you say, is the digital one, the electronic one, the online one. I don't think it is possible to have conceived of mechanical and digital things the way we have as human beings without physically lived experience in the world. So there will come a generation that is going to be quite maybe flummoxed by this because they're not going to work out how do we understand the idea of communication person to person if they haven't had a kind of concrete lived experience of that. At the moment, we're using it as a hybrid. We're using it as a kind of tool, but I think we're going to have to think about giving more multiplicity, more variety, more multimodality to the way that we work. Yeah.
Yes, Michael, and just before I give you, I want to say out loud that I think we probably need to schedule a future meetup where we talk about electronica, and we talk about AI, and we talk about recorded versus not, and there's a whole pile of stuff there that I've been learning a lot recently. Michael.
I just wanted to say that in my classes, I teach, for example, online with Eri Inoue's group in Yokohama and other groups. And I find very often what I'm trying to do is I try to get the students to describe as a first step so you say there was that phrase. So I ask either the student themselves or someone else to describe what was that like. Well, it had a rise in the middle, and then there was a little bit of slowing down at the end. And very often I find it's difficult to get groups to observe and to say, to identify those elements clearly. They'll say, "Oh, it was great," or "Oh, she showed the rhythm." Well, how did she show the rhythm, right? And try to get them observing, and then maybe through that observation, you could say, "Well, what are other possibilities?" Or, was it successful like that? Did it feel organic? Did it feel surprising? Whatever. So that may be a first step.
And then I'll just add what I think of as sort of a classic Dalcroze exercise or a routine that we might go through, and I do all versions of this multiple times with my students, where we'll take some little lick of anything, which it could be somebody's composition or somebody's improvisation, we'll body it, which this group in the room I think understands what I'm saying. Like we'll find some way to sort of, with gross body motion, wiggle our body around in a way that's supposed to model whatever the little lick was, and then we'll look to see what worked and what did not work. We'll sometimes invent bodies that don't match, and as soon as I can get my students to say that does or does not match, if I can get them to the point where they're like, I don't know, man, it's just like do whatever you want to do. If I can get them past that and to say it either matched better or matched worse, then at that point I feel like we're in the game, because now we have something that we're kind of working toward. We don't even have to word it, which is I think one of the great joys of the Dalcroze work. Like, it's helpful to use words, of course, but it isn't a requirement, and certainly not necessarily a first requirement. Instead, I don't know, I just seem to have a sense that it kind of fits like this, and then someone else like, oh, I had a different solution. I lifted my elbow and it felt like this, and then someone else says, well, I tried it this way and it didn't work. And then I had to do this other thing and I thought it worked more. And now we're kind of opening up to me a kind of a Dalcroze analysis. Hi, Karen.
Hi, everybody. I need to leave in 1 second, but wanted to just add a thought here, Stephen. I'm reminded of the phrase Ruth Alperson often uses, which is show me another way. And I like to do this with conductors, to invite them to do something 3 ways, because they often won't know what they want to do with something, right? That musical instinct isn't strong. And again, they're asking me, well, should I crescendo here, or stuff like that. So we try it 3 ways. It's easy to have a first way. The second way, sure, we can try something. By the time they get to the 3rd way, it's like, I have no idea. And they do something playful and inventive on the 3rd time. And they start to hone in on, okay, this is the choice that I want to make with this phrase. But it's only after doing it multiple ways, like you described, Stephen, that those really options even come to light, I find, for students.
It's so good. Karen is a conducting specialist. She's got a whole career of working with really outstanding ensembles, and is a longtime Dalcrozian if you don't know her. And I'm so pleased that you even had a couple minutes for us, Karen. I think it was maybe Andrew who was arguing that maybe some of what he's thinking about is the ways that this work subversively works its way into the rest of the curriculum. And I think that kind of exercise that Karen just described would be a great example of that. I was thinking to myself, I don't know how to be a conductor except that I'm a Dalcrozian. Like, I couldn't possibly separate the 2 things. I wouldn't even know what that would mean to be a non-Dalcrozian conductor. Like, they're so, for me, one and the same. We've got still almost 10 minutes. Another question or comment? Karen was waving goodbye. Something else?
Michael, you mentioned that, sorry. Beth Ann, go ahead, please. Okay. Michael, you had mentioned that the students perhaps weren't experiencing things in the same kind of depth that maybe some other parts of the world go into. Can you say a little bit more about that? Because I'm curious, like, are they using some of these exercises then just to develop kind of flexibility or something for other things? It's on its way to something else, or they just are not into going that deep into a subject, or etc.?
It's a little bit of a tricky topic. I teach in Vienna, and I'm the only Dalcrozian here. Hannah Pilgrim was here. She's now finishing up her diploma. She connected very strongly with Paul when she came to Vienna, though she has a general, let's say, a German eurythmic background, which is, people are always asking to define these terms, right? We have Geneva, we have German rhythmics, and then we have the Viennese with their Viennese rhythmics. What is this, right? And I think generally it's, many of Dalcroze's direct students came to Germany and they started concentrating on movement or modern dance, and the weight of music and movement became more equal. Where in let's say German speaking, it's not about necessarily learning music, but it's about music and movement, even movement without music, that kind of thing. Music has its own, movement has its own logic apart from music. And my opinion, my personal opinion, is that it also went very much, we're talking about learning through different sensory channels and that kind of thing. And it can get a little bit esoteric and a little bit vague, right? And that's my personal opinion. And I found this in other, programs that, the rhythmics are having, for example, a performance focus, which is, very contemporary movement, lots of multimedia, things like this that are not so directly connected with, as I said again, the nuts and bolts of music. And when I teach at these places, I think at least some of the students are refreshed and say, oh, we can actually go into depth on this without all of those traumatic experiences of sitting in solfege classes as kids and hating it, right? And yeah, that's where I find myself now in that.
Very good. Thank you. Sui Ming?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to ask, at the moment I'm opening up quite a lot of workshop there for a lot of different kind of artists that come in to do some rhythmic and also combining with some movement concepts. I just wonder, like what would you recommend to, for different kind of mediums of artists, like some people is like sculptors and some are the textile artists, some is painters and then mix up with dancers and everything. What would you think, what is important to, from your experience, working with so many performers and yeah, give me some tips and what to focus on would be quite nice.
I'll tell you my sort of short answer is I believe we have connection with sculptors or painters or architects or any of the so if they're performers, then the connection to me is obvious. Our connection to dance and our connection to violin playing and our connection to composition seems to me to be clear and obvious. They're all just versions of standard music. As soon as we jump to the next field over, particularly if it isn't obviously performative, like is architecture a performance in the same way that acting is a performance, then to me, my trick, and I'm sure there's other answers here, but my answer is you have to find the performance in the architecture. What part of architecture is performative or what part of architecture is experiential? And as soon as you can sort of realize that, an architect is a composer, and they are composing lived experiences. They're not just making a static artifact that you can turn your back on. You have to walk through the architecture. You go into it, it pushes in on you, or it opens you up, it draws you here, it draws you there. And so if you take that, then I can work with the architect to help them have a vocabulary and a personal experience in that journey. With a sculptor or a painter or someone who's drawing or whatever, it's the same idea. It's just a little smaller. So where's the eye drawn? What does it feel like to be bound or to feel open or So we're trying to figure out when I'm working with those communities, I'm trying to get them to revision their practice as a performance or as an experience, and then I can say this is what experience is. And then I use our music stuff as just examples, and I give them almost no literacy and all musicianship, and I've had some nice successes with that. Does anyone else have a different angle in or another way of saying something about working with non-musicians? Yeah, Andrew.
I might just add that one of the things that's most interesting to me in Émile Jacques Dalcroze's writing is where he speaks about the kind of ancient Greek notion of, or it's a kind of rediscovering of that, if you like, that that rhythm is the ancestor to all the arts, and if rhythm can exist on its own without a specific art form, whether it's music or dance or sculpture, how do we then find the variety of, if you like, pieces of evidence in each art form that they are all speaking to a particular rhythmic element? And sometimes when students are training for a Dalcroze qualification, they're asked to write papers about this very thing, where they take a particular musical subject and it's thought of as a musical subject in that context, but really it's a rhythmic subject, capital R rhythm, not just a lowercase r, and to sort of see that in art, to see that in life, to see that maybe in parts of the world that are quite unusual and we wouldn't necessarily think of it as being a kind of form of artistic expression. So maybe that is a way, Swimming, to sort of approach these sort of workshops where you're offering quite a variety of human output, but it all seems to bring us to a sort of single point of where it's come from, some idea, some sensory experience of rhythm.
Lovely. Beth Ann, your hand was up a minute ago. Do you have something you can offer us? Or a question?
Now that's a challenge. Can I remember what was in my head a few minutes ago?
It's okay if not.
Yeah, back then, it was what had been mentioned with Chris's question,
Yeah.
and then Karen
Yeah.
had that lovely quote from Ruth. And what came to me in that minute was how Feldenkrais practice works with difference, and how the core of that study is noticing and noticing differences. We only know what we can imagine, and we only imagine what we've had an experience of, and we only get that experience through imagining. And it's all kind of like and having as many opportunities to explore something through the constraint work that comes in that practice. So it was that, and then she ended up with, well, after two, so with the third or more than the third, we get the playful, we get what we don't expect, and which kind of ties me in with a capital letter word that I wrote when Michael was speaking, which was play, which seems a key word in all that we do, and whatever our relationship is with that word. And mine has been challenging, and that's what my thinking and my research is going more towards, is really digging down into that word. So what I was going to say prior to all of that was just threads, words that sprung out at me from the three of you and what you said that made me go, yeah. And I thought I might just offer them back to you, what spoke to me. So Andrew, I thought it was really interesting how you had this three-tier thing that I think a lot about. The Dalcroze work gives me awareness of self and others, and space, we often say, is like that three-layered thing. But you had self and others and structures. And I went, ooh, that's interesting. The institution, the outside world beyond the studio, and for every person that's mightily different. What do we encounter once we leave that space? But that's what kind of went ooh for me from what you said, as well as loads of other stuff. Yeah. process of inquiry, empathy, lots, very rich. Thank you, very rich. And then Michael, the play and the how. Sorry, are we going over time?
No, we're good.
Presence was the word that connected Stephen and Michael. You both came to that. And I was also interested forever between the Franco, Swiss, German, Austrian, aren't we all? And I think the more that you spend time with this work, the more conferences we attend, the more dialogues we have, the more round tables, the more we get to understand that we don't want binary anything. Because, yeah, that could be another VDM. But we so much need the richness of both. And we can be deprived if we have too much of cheesecake or roast chicken. It's like, I think that Dalcro's work, I don't know where that came from. Is this being recorded, by the way?
It is. And I'm trying to figure out, am I cheesecake or roast chicken? I'm not sure which one I am. It's so good.
And apologies to vegans. Yeah, it's all about balance. And we all enter the work with different pieces of us out of kilter with the smorgasbord that's on offer. And it's for us to find out, wow, how do we need to rebalance ourselves? I don't need to rebalance myself in the same way as Andrew or Debbie, or I have to rebalance myself in my version of myself to my understanding of this practice. And nobody else can tell me what that is. I need to find that out. And then I need to teach with that new knowledge. Sorry, I'm going off on one. And then Stephen, the presence I felt was embraced in the word techne. And Andrew, you mentioned the Greek and the Aristotelian and the pre-knowledge that Dalcroze had. So the word techne has in it the skill and the artistry, and how the Dalcroze work is kind of embedded in there. And you also had the literacy in the middle, which was nice to kind of bridge the kind of the know-how and the performative. Anyway, I think I've hogged, and I'm going to
No, there's
silence
no
myself.
hogging at all. That was really wonderful. Thank you for that. And it's a really nice way that we're almost at the end here, so already a nice little summary. We definitely have time for one more either thought or question. Someone else want to offer in?
We have the most wonderful community.
Yeah, it's really something, isn't it? And this is like a VIP crowd who showed up. I'm so excited to be in the room with all of you. The one little thing then, if no one has something burning, it's a little thing. At the beginning of Beth Ann's summary, she talked about Feldenkrais, and then Beth Ann, I don't know if you'll say it better than me, but you drew a little path about how experience comes from knowing, comes from the physical. And I don't know if I said that exactly right, but we don't know, the way that I restate this same set of ideas is that there is nothing abstract that you can name, that you can't tie to something concrete. That is to say, you can't name abstract thoughts, but that you've participated in primary interactions. So that you can't have secondary kind of level understanding without tying it to some primary understanding. I can't talk with you about sadness, an abstract kind of distant secondary kind of thing, except that I can talk with you about the crushing weight on my chest. And so you have to tie it to something that is tactile and personally experienced before you have a model to try to describe something that is farther out. And that kind of understanding is sort of in the DNA of the Dalcroze education, is that we don't ask people to talk about anything at the beginning. In fact, depending on who your master teacher were, you might be forbidden from asking them questions and making them talk. It only matters that they experience first. And so we try to lead everybody into these primary experiences, And then either through language or just through more experience, we think we then come to know something more abstract. If you want a different way into that same discussion, this is the work on metaphors by Lakoff and Johnson. So if you haven't read that work, if you find Lakoff and Johnson, the first book is called Metaphors We Live By. It's not a very big book, and it's not the hardest set of ideas. But if you read that book with a Dalcrozian attention and a Dalcrozian background, that book will mean something richer to you than to just the standard person who would read that book, who's like, oh, it's nice that we make the metaphor between love and war and la la la. So, but when Beth Ann made that little path between Feldenkrais and Dalcroze, that's the thing that popped in my head was, oh, right, that metaphor set of ideas. And to me, the sort of the summary of that book is there is no way to know the abstract except to have had primary experiences. And then Jacques Dalcroze is all about primary experience. And that's the last little bit that I'll toss in.
I want to add more, but we have to go. I just wanted to share. I'm in the middle of a Laban Bartenieff training. And up on my board over here, some of the things that are mentioned as part of the fundamentals is this idea that perception, experience, knowing is embodied and foundational to our body of knowledge. So the same idea of like how we construct knowledge, and that kinesthetic knowledge is the basis or root of all other ways of knowing.
That's it.
Some lovely languaging by Karen Studd, who wrote a book called Everybody Has a Body.
So good.
What is a body? And she does a really good job of making something accessible on a two-dimensional page, if you guys are interested.
All right, friends. I think we did it in good VDM fashion. Always surpasses my expectations, and I always wish there was a little more time. But I'm also thankful that we can start on time and end on time and try to encourage everybody to come back. So there is a masterclass coming up. Next is the short course with Greg Risto, and then right against that is the masterclass with Timothy Caldwell, and then right after that is the next meetup. And so subscribe to the mailing list, subscribe to the calendar, and come back. We hope to see everybody again soon. Thank you so much to Michael and Andrew for carving out some time to be responsible to be here. Thank you so much for carving out that time. And everybody else, we'll see you soon.
Thank you.